Hi everybody, this is something different here. So I bought a tractor and it's a Bolens G192, which is probably from the very early 1980s, and it's made by a company called ISEKI in Japan, and it was for a period of time branded as Bolens here in the United States. So I got it for almost no money, and but it had some issues. It has a PTO issue that I'm going to be working on next, but the primary issue, because I want to use this for grading some gravel driveways, is to get the 3-point hitch lift working. And I went to the usual YouTube to try to get information, and very little information on these Bolens units. There's probably not too many of them out there, but and especially regarding any kind of information on the 3-point hitch, there was almost nothing. So I figured as long as I had this apart, I'd kind of go over the bits and pieces, so you get a chance to see. If you happen to have one of these units and need to work on it, you can take a look and see what's inside before you undo anything. So this is the rear of the tractor. This would be towards the front. These are the 3-point hitch lift arms. They come down and go through this shaft, this heavy shaft, and then there's a short stubby crank here to this linkage, which goes down to a free floating piston, and that piston is about this thick and has like a Delrin ring, and then probably like a 1/4 inch thick O-ring in a cut in the side of the piston. So that's what's holding the oil pressure. And then down here, the oil comes in down here at the bottom, which is actually more or less the top, because this sits on top of the transmission case kind of like a hat. So these come out behind the driver's seat. Driver's seat sits on top of this. This is the control for how quickly the implement will drop when you lower it. So there's a shaft in here. This is threaded, so it's going to go in and out depending on how you turn it. And then there's a valve here, and if you turn it all the way out, it's going to close this valve off completely. So for transport, it's going to keep the oil in the cylinder to, hopefully keep the implement up. So that's important. If you have this out of here and you're trying to get the piston out, you've got to push in on this valve. Otherwise, if this is full of oil, it's not going anywhere. It's like solid in there. So you're going to have to find something, either use this thing separate to push this in. You got to overcome the spring, and then you can drain the liquid out of the cylinder. So this is the valve assembly. So the oil from the oil pump comes in on the side here from the oil pump on the front of the engine, comes along the frame, and then in here, goes through some passages. There's some O-rings where this bolts to the case, and there's 4 big bolts on the top. Those hold the cylinder in place. And there's a couple O-rings between the case and this mating surface on the top that I replaced when I had this all apart. So the oil comes into the valve assembly here. What broke on this was this spring. So this arm was free to float, and it basically was laying out here, and it was basically telling the system that it needed to pressurize this all the time. So it basically forced the piston beyond its normal limit, and that's what got it stuck here. So that took a lot of work for me to get this piston out, hone the cylinders, get it all, skook them, so go back together. So this is the overpressure. So there is a overpressure limit, and regardless of what's going on, if you exceed the pressure here, it's going to vent the oil back into the pan. But if you're in that situation, which is what I was having happen, the oil pump is working really hard. It's working against this valve, so it was heating up the hydraulic fluid very, very quickly. This is the strainer, which this is the pickup. So the oil level's well above the bottom here. So this is something to keep clean. If you start having problems with your lift, take this out and clean it. So what I found interesting was just the design, because I couldn't figure this out without opening it up. So this is a typical 3-point hitch control, which is the lever by the right hand side of your seat, and it's a position control. So you lift the lever up a little bit and it lifts the implement up a little bit, as opposed to like with a loader where you pull the lever until you get it to the level that you want, then you release the lever. This is just position, so you lift it up. You can put a stop in so you can't lift, like some things you don't want to lift too high, like a post hole digger that's running off the PTO. If you lift it up too high, it's going to break the U-joint, or you'll have a drive shaft flopping around and you could hurt somebody. So the position control I could never figure out until I took the case apart. So this is an eccentric, so it's closer to the shaft up here, and then it's probably double the distance back here. So depending on where these arms are, and they're basically up all the way right now, this little lever is kind of tracking where what the position of this is. So this is all the way down. This is going to be pushed all the way into the cylinder. The actual piston will be back somewhere back here. So when you move this control, it comes in the shaft here, and it's working with this black lever, which is hinged here and hinged back here based on where this is. So this is what's actually pushing on the valve. So pulled all the way in tight here, that's the valve is basically free spooling. It's not adding any hydraulic fluid to here. It's basically what they call open center. So it's just flowing oil through the system at very low pressure. So when you move this lever, it's going to push on the valve, open the valve, start oil into the cylinder here until it gets up to the point where the position control hits this, and it's going to basically tell it, no more. We've got enough. We've reached the point where we're happy, and this is going to come back to a spooling position, an open center, and it's just going to flow, and the oil will be kept in the cylinder. So I thought that was interesting. This has been a learning experience. It's taken about a month to get this apart and actually get the piston out. That was a major undertaking because the end of the cylinder was rusted, and because this broke, it pushed it too far, so it basically wedged the piston inside the end of the cylinder, and it took pounding and heat and hydraulics and a whole bunch of things to get it loose. But I think we're in pretty good shape, and I think it's going to go back together. The only thing I'm going to definitely do is get some leader wire and tie off on here and on here to make sure that these don't pop off. It'll be wired in place, kind of like there's some, actually this head up here is actually wired in place. You may not be able to see it, but there's like fishing wire here to keep it from coming loose as well. It's not hard to get off, but it's messy, and obviously if you don't have to, you don't want to do it. So anyway, I hope that's helpful. You know, as we solve more problems on this tractor, I may add some more videos. So thank you. Bye.